Hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm Dan, and this is Forlorn Hobbies. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today's video sees us returning to our Eagles and Glory series, which is the hobby vlog series that tracks the progress of my Napoleonic Russian army that was shamefully supposed to be ready for this year's Under Eagles to Glory 2 event, which was a spectacular failure on my part. However, we will obviously continue the series at a more relaxed pace now until we have finished the project. Now, today's update focuses on the Russian Dragoons and looking a bit more at how I went about doing those. So, what was a Dragoon? Now, Dragoons at this period in time, in the Napoleonic era, were seen as almost the universal cavalrymen. They were medium cavalry units that kind of were the more populous kind of area in the cavalry part of the army, in between the light cavalry scouts made up of mounted Jaegers, Hussars, Uhlans, etc., and the more elite heavy shock cavalry that were the cuirassiers at the time. Now, until the end of 1812, the Dragoons were the most numerous part of the Russian cavalry wing and consisted of up to 36 regiments. However, some were later converted into more cuirassier units, and by the time of 1813 to 15 there were only 18 Dragoon regiments remaining. Now, in battle, the Dragoons were often assigned the lion's share of the fighting, but were also used as an occupation force, patrols, and even guards for convoys and transports. They weren't opposed to fighting dismounted in sieges, and would often assist the infantry and gunners in times of struggle as well. Now, for this regiment in particular, I will be using the Perry Miniatures Russian Dragoons in winter dress exclusively for this project. Now, I absolutely love these sculpts. The detail is just smooth and crisp, great castings, tiny little bit of flash to clean up, but you get that on every model, but there's no obvious disfigurement. Just taking a little bit of care with a blade or a file just to clean up some of the gaps in between the legs, and depending on packaging you might have to straighten out the horses, but other than that they are flawless. You get options of arms kind of charging forwards, saber drawn, pointing out, as well as more casual at rest poses, which allows you to have that kind of front rank, second rank dynamic, which I like the limited versatility to it. My only concern really as a painter and how I go about things is the fact that the rider is cast already on the horse, but that's not the end of the world. I'd prefer my riders and my horses separate just to speed up certain painting aspects of it. However, these models are fantastic in my opinion. Now, when it came to painting this Dragoon regiment, I broadly followed the same process and colour palette that I used to paint my Russian infantry, which you can see in a bit more detail in the previous video in the series. The first notable exception was the initial prime colour, which I opted for a grey instead of brown to reflect the colour of the cavalrymen's greatcoats, which were grey as opposed to the light brown of the infantry. And this also enabled me to have a suitable neutral tone to paint the horse as well. I applied all the relevant base coats that to the model, to the rider, I should say, and the livery on the horse before washing it, because that is the most messy part of the painting process for the style that I had chosen to undertake. Now, before layering and highlighting those areas up, I moved on to painting the horse. Now, as I previously have stated, I'm not a huge fan of painting the rider and horse together because of the way that I like to paint horses using contrast, which requires a much lighter prime. So at this point, I blocked out all the horse area with a grey cere. I think it was 2 thin coats just to get a nice consistent coverage before applying the contrasts and painting the horse to completion before I carried on with the layering stage to the rider, because this gave me an overall general kind of feel as to how the finished rider would look, whether I'd got the colours kind of right in the uniforms, and just how it contrasted with the horse itself. And then the layering process really kind of delivers that extra bit of satisfaction in your approach towards completion, having the horse done in that kind of middle stage, because you can really kind of see the end result that you are working towards. The basing I approached in exactly the same manner as I had the infantry, so I won't go into too much detail here, but I decided to add slightly larger a variety of the snow tufts just to emphasize the larger spaces on the bases and just give it a little bit more contrast of the rolling tundras in that part of the world. And I think it really brought the quite dull toned paint scheme into its own by just making it pop that little bit further. And I also, while spacing, made sure that I weathered the hems of the greatcoats, because obviously the Russian greatcoat was a lot longer, and as a rider would be walking to the horses, they would still get quite dirty, bits of mud, dirt, weather, and I think it just really helps to emphasize the character of the miniatures, and I was really happy with how these have turned out. The flag is from GMB Designs and just adds that finishing touch to the unit. Moving ahead with this series, we will probably be having an artillery installment next, before looking at further units down the line. But that will probably have to wait a few weeks whilst I sort things out, because Muggins didn't record things as he was going along in a mad rush to try and get ready for the Under Eagles to Glory event. So I'm having to go back and find the time to do similar units just to blend it all together so I have enough footage for the videos. Next week I thought I would have a little wander into a new series on using random household items to help give you a more visual and engaging gaming experience for quite cheap, because who doesn't love a well-dressed table to help you immerse in the enjoyment of the game even more? So with that, I will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. Until next time, enjoy your hobby.